Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast. I've done 300 training videos. This is the first time I forgot to shut my door. If you show up early, you get to see Neil Raw. Hey, I like starting the meeting off, though, with a tip before we dive into the meat of the training. So welcome to those of you who are showing up early on time. But my tip for you today is to just remember that sales is sales wherever you go. I've often heard people say that, maybe you should think about when you have a business going into commercial or state and local before you get into federal. Sales is sales is sales. It doesn't matter where you're at. In fact, I think it is way easier in the federal government. That's a whole different training. But the thing to keep in mind is sales is about getting to know your customer, understanding their challenges and their goals, and then beginning to talk to them about potential solutions, which ends up in the federal market as a proposal, right? And it's the same thing on the commercial side or state and local. You need to understand people's goals and their challenges and how you can help them. That's the same thing whether you prime contract or subcontract. If you're a subcontractor, you need to look to the prime and go, what challenges are you running into? What goals do you have? Well, we're trying to get into this agency, or we're really trying to bring home this particular opportunity, but we're weak in this task area. Whatever it is, when you develop the relationships, understand the challenges and goals, then you're going to be able to serve the customer as a prime contractor, or the prime contractor as a subcontractor. So just keep in mind, sales is sales is sales. Okay, that was just a quick tip for those of you showing up early and on time. Let me just flip over to my share my screen, and we're gonna get rocking and rolling on today's training. By the way, before I go too far, if you have not downloaded the federal directories, Small Business Specialist, this is over 1,000 names on our website. These are free directories. We put a lot of effort into it, and I've been building this small business directory, 10 years, but we've really been keeping it very updated the last 2 years. So go download those. 1,000 people in the in federal agencies, Small Business Specialists. Great way to get in the door. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about, speaking of getting in the door, how to secure valuable meetings with ease. And when I say ease, I want you to keep in mind, I didn't say without work. Right? Anything worth doing is worth doing well, and anything that's worth doing well is going to take effort. And so today's training is going to be talking about how you can do something with ease, but it requires an upfront effort to get to the point that it's easy. What I'm going to teach you doesn't mean tomorrow you start getting in the door easily. It means tomorrow you start doing the things that will enable you to get indoors easily every single time. I can pretty much get in any door I want, right? And I don't mean that in some sort of grandiose way. I just mean I've been putting in a lot of the legwork for 20 years in the government contracting space. And then the last 5 years, it's funny, it's been more than 20 years now, but the last 5 years as really teaching this, it's a reaching out. So I've been doing a lot of the upfront work. You don't have to do it at my level. You just have to do it for the customers that you're trying to work with. But when you do the right things, and I'll show you some of those right things today, you're going to be able to get meetings easily with the customer or the teaming partner that you want. I want you to keep in mind, though, when we talk about having meetings, it's really important to back up for a second and say, I'm not just trying to get meetings for the sake of having meetings. I once went to a federal agency and I showed up really early for my meeting, and something happened and the other person was really late to theirs. And the person we were meeting with asked me if I'd be willing to just have two people in the same meeting. I was like, well, that's fine with me, because I wasn't a government contractor. It was from the GovCon chamber. And when we sat down, I saw this person sit down and look to the government as if the government was going to tell them what was the purpose of the meeting. When you meet with people, have a purpose, right? The meetings must drive towards a purpose. And I think these are three of the main reasons that meetings are valuable, and three purposes of meetings. The first one is that meetings help develop relationships, right? This is really important. If you watched my training yesterday, success in sales means you have relationships. And so I taught you how to build relationships. But when you have meetings, you're able to strengthen those relationships, right? We build them and maintain those relationships, and we do it through meeting with them on a phone, virtually like this, or in person. The second thing is business development is all about building relationships within the agency, understanding the agency, so you can learn about opportunities. And so when you have meetings, you can hear about opportunities. That should be a purpose of the meeting, right? I'm going in to learn about new opportunities, discuss your agency, or to discuss a particular opportunity, or what I call shaping an opportunity, right? Shaping an opportunity is just capture in federal sales. Hearing about opportunities is business development. Yesterday, I had a meeting with somebody about an opportunity they were pursuing, And we were talking about how do you shape an opportunity. And in this opportunity that they had, there was a key personnel certification that was required. And this requirement said that your key person must have this certification from this vendor. And the rationale from the government was that if you had that certification, then you could influence that vendor to do whatever you needed to do. You could get more help. Well, that's not the case. And so what I was advising my customer is to teach the contracting officer that the relationship is built by partnerships, not by certification. Anybody can get a certification, but when your company is partnered with Microsoft or your company is partnered with Otis Elevators, then your company has the ability to interact with that company. Ironically, I say people do business with people, but companies have the relationship at that level. Well, having meetings allows you to be able to shape the opportunity, to be able to talk with a contracting officer in that example that I just used. And by the way, keep in mind, when we talk about what I'm talking about here today about relationships and opportunities, it all comes out of the 7-step process that I teach for success in the federal market, right? It begins with research, learning about them, and then finding their names and phone numbers, which is all next week's training, by the way. And then outreach, picking up the phone and doing some cold calls. Today is talking about how do you make that outreach effort, those cold calls, warmer. And from those, you begin to build those relationships, like I said, which lead to the opportunities, which eventually lead to sales, which is what you want, right? So today I'm going to be driving deeply into warming up buyers, right? This outreach portion. How do you warm them up with engagements that you do before a meeting? So that way, when you ask for a meeting, you're able to have it. One of the things to keep in mind about meetings is if you just do a cold call meeting, if you reached out to me and said, hey, Neil, I want a meeting, that's it. Well, I've got all these risks that I'm worried about. Who are you? Are you just some, somebody trying to take my money? Are you a cyber spoofer or whatever? Are you just a salesperson that's just spamming me? Whatever it is, I have all these risks. But if I had been engaged with you, or at least following you, you've been putting yourself in front of me where I'm at, then I would begin to know, like, and trust you, which defeats or lowers those risks. And so I want to talk about that, warming up the buyer with the engagement. And then I'm going to show you examples of how I do this, how I take a federal document and use that as an example way of getting in the door, making it easier to have meetings. So that's what we're going to cover today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I teach tips for success in the federal market. I've been a government contractor for 20 years. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow the process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you. If you stay to the end of this training, you're going to get value. Consider becoming a GovCon Chamber of Commerce sustaining member. It's less than $1 a day, and you help make this training available to everybody who's out there. Okay, let's dive into warming up buyers with engagement, the different ways you can do it. And the first thing I want to talk about before I get into the how is just understanding what does it mean to do marketing engagement. I put down 20 touches and engagements. What this means is one way or another, I'm doing 20 interactions. An example, if I'm engaging with you, this training might be one. If you asked for the 7-step process handout, that might be another engagement. If you see a LinkedIn post that I do, if I go to your LinkedIn and I engage with a post of yours, right? Those are touches or engagements, marketing touches or engagements. And so anybody can pick a number out there, but basically you want to do at least 20 of those before I begin to even have any awareness of who you are. I know you, right? We actually describe it internally as the 7-hour rule. And maybe somebody else has coined this rule a while ago. We just use it. And the idea of a 7-hour rule is I don't want to pay attention to the number of engagements. I want to pay attention to how much time you are engaging with my content. And I want you to think the same way. How are you enabling your federal buyers to engage with your company, to learn about whatever it is you sell, right? How are you working with them? And I'm going to give you some tips exactly how you do that. But if you do 7 hours, if they're engaged with you one way or another for 7 hours, they come to a webinar, they download this document, which might take this long to read. They have a meeting with you, whatever it is. After 7 hours, you kind of established that relationship. It's up to you to maintain it in a good state, but 7 hours is a good rule. And the reason this is important, don't start selling until after 7 hours, right? And that's a loose number there. So let's talk about how you can engage buyers. So one of the easy ways you can do it is you can attend events. There's lots of virtual events, so you can attend a ton of those, right? Forget about Netflix, spend your hour in somebody's event. This event right here is a good example. There's a lot of these type of events that federal agencies host, right? You just find your target agency and see who's doing what. And so now we've shifted to a lot of virtual. But if you're outside of a base or if you're in the DC area, you have the ability to attend a lot of events. Next week, I'm going to tell you about this event I'm going to. Jennifer Schaus is hosting it, but it's a networking event where she's got federal buyers there around, and the rest of us can kind of network. So that those kind of events allow you to be visible, right? So you're not having deep conversations when you're at an event, but you're showing up, right? You're letting them see you. And this idea, of course, I can think about it and I see it, but I remember hearing this specifically from Anna Ehrman, who talked about she and somebody else, I can't remember, apologize, but they talked about how we begin to see you show up and we begin to take you serious. This company is serious about working with us because they come to our virtual outreach or vendor outreach sessions, VOSs, right? So DOS has these once a month. A lot of these agencies have it once a month. Have you or somebody in your company showing up every month at those events, and you will get seen and you will begin to be, this is the engagement I'm talking about. They will begin to take you seriously, and then it starts making it easier to have meetings. Leaving voicemails. This is a big deal to me. I hear about people who tell me they've been doing outreach, but the outreach effort is I left 1, 2, 3 voicemails over a period of a couple of weeks. That's not the right way. The idea, and I put here, leave 50 voicemails or more. And when I say voicemails, I mean you haven't been able to connect with that person. Well, that's fine. You want to, but reach out every 2, 3, 4 days. Don't reach out to more than 4 days, right? If it's more than a couple of days, it's already gone off that person's mind. There are people who reach out to me right now, yesterday, who I really want to get to. There's people on my team who get back to me and say they need something, and I really want to respond. And then something happens and their email's down, and then it's gone. Some of you reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I really want to get back to you, but then I get like 100 other messages that come in, and I'm trying to go through them all, and I literally should go to the bottom and come up. But I don't mean not to get back to you. Well, we call it raising it to the top of your inbox, right? Or to the top of your mind. So if you follow up and leave a voicemail, hey, John, I don't want to be a pest, just following up on a voicemail at your convenience. I want to connect with you. You're never pushy. You're never going, how come you're not meeting with me? How come you didn't get back? But you just are consistent, persistent, right? There's a difference between being persistent and being a pest. And when you leave the voicemails, don't tell whole stories, 15 to 30 seconds max. But just don't give up. That's my point, right? That's the idea there. And then engage on LinkedIn. I don't want to tell you a lot about this because you can go watch training I just did this week, I did last week, on all these different ways you can engage on LinkedIn and engage buyers. But the whole point of this is that you're trying to help buyers and teammates know, like, and trust you. Get them to be aware that you even exist, and then beginning to understand what you do. This is why I tell you in the chat, put your company name and your core competency. I can't tell you how many federal buyers talk to me every week saying, hey, love the training. I get in there. I had somebody the beginning of this week saying, I'm forwarding this to all the small businesses who are serving our agency. There's buyers in there. Take the 2 seconds to put your information in, but also do it in all these other ways that I'm teaching you. And when you do this engagement, you're getting people to know, like, and trust you. When they know, like, and trust you, even just out there, then they will begin to reach out to you, or they will be totally receptive to you when you reach out and say, hey, John, can we have a meeting? Okay, so the idea of today is I really wanted to drive down on one particular suggestion that you could use to help make it easier to get meetings. And so the idea, first off, let me just tell you, when I say federal document repurposing, what I mean is the government puts out documents, and I'll show you in a second. A great example, yesterday there was a document that came out for TikTok. TikTok was banned a little bit, like within the last couple of months, on government devices. And there was a whole discussion about, is it all devices or just government? It was government furnished devices. But then recently, this past week or so, it came out and said it's not only banned on government devices, also it's banned on contractor devices that are used in support of a contract, or any personal device used in conjunction with this contract. That means if I'm checking my government email through my phone, I can't have TikTok on that phone. Well, that's a big deal, right? That's the kind of document that you want to take it. It's really hard to read. It's the CFR, the regulations that are out there. And so you want to take that, summarize it for your customers, for teammates, and for agencies. Hey, do you realize this is impacting all of your employees as well? What's your policy, et cetera. And I'll talk more about that and how I come back in. But the reason you want to use these documents and the path that you're taking them on is you're making them aware of problems, right? So we make customers problem aware, and we're trying to make them problem aware of things that the government is talking about. If one agency or one headquarters, for example, DOD, puts out some big initiative, which I'll show you in a second, then you can share that throughout the rest of DOD. You can share the DOD document throughout the rest of the federal agencies. You can bring that to their awareness. And I'll tell you, so many people are unaware of the very documents that guide what they do because there's just too much information. And inside there, that problem we're trying to make them aware, I call that an implied need. If the document says that you must ban TikTok, the implication or the implied need is that you need somebody to help you deal with that. The policies around TikTok, how do you put in technical checks to make sure people aren't using or having TikTok when they come in, whatever it is, right? You can go in and talk to them. Well, that's an implied need. And when you go in and have a conversation, you turn it into an explicit need. People only buy when they have an explicit need. And sales is about turning implied needs into explicit needs. All right. So also when you're sharing these type of documents, you're raising your SME status by, we call it borrowed credibility. So if I'm sharing a DoD document or even on the industry side, like a Microsoft document, I'm getting a little bit of borrowed credibility because people are just putting us together. It's like, oh, Neil and DoD must be working together. Yeah, because I just shared their document. Right? It's like, it's called borrowed credibility for a reason, because I'm borrowing a little bit of the credibility you give DoD. A little bit of that is rubbing off on me, and that's what you can be doing with your customers as well. And the last thing I want to just say about these documents, it's really important, is that you want to be what we call it giver's gain, right? And this came from a group called BNI. But giver's gain, the whole idea of it is don't give with expectations. Don't shape these and it's going to lead to a sale. No, think about your customers and I want to keep them informed. Think about your teammates and I want to keep them informed. What if you have a teammate who's using, accidentally, they've got people with TikTok on it and they lose their contract because they violated the contract or something, right? By informing your teammate, you're helping them. You're making sure. Don't give with any expectation. Givers will gain, though, because in the federal government in particular, your buyers will start seeing you as the trusted advisor. When you only are sharing documents around your space, elevators or SharePoint or cybersecurity, workforce development, et cetera, right? Machine parts, when you're sharing information around your expertise, they will begin to see you as that expert. And when you're getting some of that borrowed credibility from agency documents, it's even better. So I want to show you some examples for whatever time we have, and I'll show you how I would share them. Oh, so that was my exit. Hold on. Okay, so this is the first document. I got 5 that I'm going to go across. We'll see how much time we got. This one is just a single page document, and there's 2 of them that I actually have. The Department of Air Force Enterprise Zero Trust Roadmap, and this one's Department of Air Force Enterprise ICAM Roadmap. These roadmaps are beautiful, right? They don't mean anything to me. I kind of know ICAM, but I really don't. But if that's your space, right? Imagine sharing this out to the buyers. And there's so many ways you could share this out. First off, you could just put this out on LinkedIn with nothing, just putting it out, and people will be thankful that you shared it. The second thing is you could put this out on LinkedIn and put some writing like I do in the post that just summarizes it, draws people's eyes to something. You know, this document is fantastic because it's a roadmap for this year, FY23 through 28. That's huge, and beginning to understand this. The next thing you might be able to do is to take this and forward it to non-Air Force folks and say, hey, this is the Air Force and how they're using it. I'm curious how what your ICAM roadmap looks like. Can we come in and talk, right? I might send an email, try to set up a meeting and include this after I'm engaging with them a little bit. If I posted this on LinkedIn, I bet you I would find people from the federal government, and partly because I have a lot of connections, but I would see them begin to engage it. It's like, oh, this is great. You'd hear them talk about certain stuff. I don't zoom in to get a meeting, but now they're aware of me and maybe I engage. So the same thing here with the Zero Trust Roadmap. If you don't know what Zero Trust is, basically it's a buzzword because it's been around for a long time. But right now it's a buzzword because it's a cybersecurity way of running your shop, your agency. But here is the roadmap for the Air Force. Well, what's the Department of Education's roadmap look like? How about FEMA, the Department of Transportation, right? And so I can use something like this to guide the meetings I have. I can walk in and say, hey, I was looking at, looking at the Air Force's roadmap for Zero Trust, and I was applying that to the federal mandates about zero trust, and there's some rules that come down from the White House. How are you guys doing it? Something else I can do is say, here's how we would recommend you put something like this in place. Just having the conversation allows you to get in the door, start talking about it. Here's another example, and I shared this document a while ago, right? But I'm not a cybersecurity company. But if I get a document like this, one of the things that I want to encourage you is that this document, DoD Cyber Workforce Strategy, this is huge because the government struggles with finding and hiring the right people to work cyber within the government for many different reasons, right? A lot of us have acquisition or talent acquisition challenges, but also DoD doesn't pay as much as the commercial side usually. And so they're fighting against the very industry that they contract with sometimes. All normal, it's the normal way of doing business. Well, here's their strategy on how to develop the cyber workforce, right? How do I give opportunities to people who maybe wouldn't have had it? And we grow our own cyber workforce. So in here, as you come down, you can see some of these things that are in here. So here they talk about their main goals that they have, and then their cyber workforce initiatives. So if I went down that way, like let's get out of 15. If I went down, I might share this in many different ways, right? I might share this as a LinkedIn post with a document. I might break up each one of these goals and put them on a different slide just saying this kind of word to get visibility. It's like, hey, here's top 5 goals you should consider. And then in it, I would just say courtesy DoD Cyber Command or something. But down here, they've got initiatives. Let me come down a little bit further here. So right here, they've got the following areas represent department-wide challenges. This is what I mean by using a government document to kind of help you get in the door and start conversations. This idea of reaching out to address the 4 human capital pillars around cybersecurity. I might, if I'm a cybersecurity firm or workforce development firm around cyber, I might go talk to the HR people who, no offense to the HR people, but tend to be a little less busy than the cyber people because cyber is dealing with attacks every day. But the HR folks, right? I might go in there and talk about, well, what's your plan for developing your strategy for building a cyber workforce? And I can go in and talk to them about, I can either show them this document and walk it through, or I can pull things out of this document to use it as a way to talk to them. But I know what to say, right? These are common discussions that are being had. There's a lack of common criteria. There's a need for targeted identification of people, right? There's a limited availability of assessment programs that are out there to test people. And then, like I said, this last bullet is exactly what I just said. It's high attrition, meaning somebody comes on and then they're gone because somebody offers them more money. And so that's just one way of pulling this document. I don't want to go through it too much, but you can find documents like this related to your core competency. Don't share this if this is not your space. Figure out what you sell, even elevators and bolts and nuts. You can find things that are related to those things. This other one, here's another example. And I think this could actually fit for a lot of you out there. But this one is called the Department of Defense's Responsible Artificial Intelligence Strategy and an Implementation Pathway. And what this means is that the DoD recognized and the government recognized that, man, we got a lot of challenges coming out with AI. AI is going to be everywhere. How do we make sure people are using this ethically, right? Responsibly is what it's saying here, but fundamentally they mean ethically using AI. And so as you go through, there's a lot of suggestions. Let me come to the table of contents right here. But right here, you can see this implementation approach, right? And implementation lines of effort. Well, I might use that with customers. Again, 2 different types of people. This is a DoD level document. So that means at the highest level of the department, they put it out. What typically happens though is people wait for things to happen at the top and then they kind of float down to the bottom. Well, what you could do, and I did this in the VA, is just jump to the bottom. For me, it was down to the hospitals, right? While headquarters in DC was doing whatever they were doing, I began to implement things. In my case, it was Microsoft SharePoint, but I went down to the bottom. Well, you could do that here. Go down to the lower level commands throughout the Army, Navy, and Air Force and Marine Corps, right? Go down to those lower level commands and introduce them to this document. Many of them won't even be aware of it. Talk to them about the tenets for implementing or the implementation approach. When you get into that, let me see if this has a picture in this. Right there is the implementation approach, right? So here they're talking about how they will do this. Well, I would go in and have conversations and What's your guys' strategy for implementing these recommendations coming from DoD headquarters? But then I would also take this right over to Department of Education. Hey, this is what's being discussed in DoD. Where's the discussion going on your side, right? I can't have the whole meeting with you here in this 30-minute training, but I think you get my point where you take a document like this and you're able to interpret it because you are the subject matter expert. You can share it out there. You can walk it into an agency. You can use it as a door opener, right? Imagine sharing. This thing has 47 pages. I'd be willing to bet you could quickly create 30 pieces of content, one for every day over the next 30 days that is somehow touching on this. And just at the bottom of your post says, reach out to Neil if you want to have a conversation about responsible AI in your agency. That's all you put. And you're getting visibility. You have to go with the long game, right? I said it doesn't require, it requires work, but it still will be easy once you start working out there, putting it out. So let me do one last one here. I just want to show you this one because this one was huge. I created a whole plan for one of our customers around how do they go out and dominate the zero trust market, if you will, within the federal government. A lot of people will play at one area of the conversation and leave all these other stakeholders out of where they're trying to go. An example in the VA, there's something called electronic health records, the conversion of paper records to electronic health records, right? And everybody wanted to go after that in the VA because the VA has all the veterans' health records, right? And so everybody wanted to play there. That's where a lot of the major conversations were going. And so companies like mine headed to the bottom and went down and worked with the actual hospitals. It's the same thing here. Zero trust is a big word, but it's happening kind of at the top. A lot of people down below don't have the resources that they do at the department level to implement or even understand zero trust fully. So you could take a document like this, which is a capability execution roadmap, and go in and say, hey, why don't we talk about this? Why don't we talk about how we might be able to help you implement some of this on your own? Or if the department is implementing such a major strategy like this, it's going to flow down to your office or your command. Why don't we help you get ready so that when it hits your command or office, you're not reactionary, you're ready, right? And so that's the idea of taking a document like this where you can go in. I think these are course of actions, right? And it lays out, this document is beautiful because it lays out all these roadmaps and your agency customers, the people you're trying to target, this is the information they would value hearing from you. And it's what gives you, again, this raising your SME status. We call it supreme domain authority because you speak on one topic and people get really used to hearing about it from you. All right, here's what I want you to remember from today's training. First off, you definitely can get meetings with ease if you put in the work. And so an example of the work is what I just described today. Engagement on LinkedIn or events, but also engagement by doing the repurposing of federal documents that are out there. I would encourage you, here's the task for you for tomorrow, let's say the next business day, is go spend 30 minutes, schedule it, and just try to find a couple of documents like I just shared. When you find them, you and your team can then just break them down into posts. I do training like that. You can go look on how I talk about how do you repurpose training. So I give you step-by-step. You can find that training that's out there. Hey, I want to invite you to join my BD Accelerator workshop if your company's at the right stage. And you're looking to move to the next level, get some help to accelerate your BD activities. And you're right for us if you're doing 2 million or more, right? Certainly more. But I try to get it at that 2 million level so you've got some past performance. And ideally, I'm looking for 8A firms because there's a lot of activity that I'm trying to do. And I figure if I raise 8A firms, it'll kind of bring everybody along. But this is a paid workshop for 5 firms towards the end of the year. And I will tell you, we're filling that up. I'd love to have you in there if you're interested. No pressure, but it's a great program for those who are at the right position and ready to accelerate when you got the process in hand. For everybody else, remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training.